Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing my July reading wrap up. So I read 5 books in the month of July, so I'm going to be going through and talking about each book I read, as well as telling you the star rating I gave it. I will definitely put timestamps down below to each individual book, as well as links up in the cards to the reviews that I've done for each individual book. I did do reviews for all of these books except for one, because I know that some people like more dedicated reviews where I go into more depth about what I liked and didn't like about the book, whereas wrap-ups, I'm going to go more quickly and not delve as deeply into my thoughts about the book. So I know that was a lot, but before we go ahead and get on to the wrap up, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, you can check down in the description box below for links to my Amazon shop, where I link all of the favorite books that I talk about on my channel, as well as my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. So I'm going to be discussing these books in rating order from lowest to highest. The first book is The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This is an adult thriller, and it is the first Lisa Jewell book that I have read. It follows a girl named Libby, and when Libby is 25 years old, she receives this inheritance of this huge mansion, and she is known as the baby. She was found upstairs in a cradle, well taken care of, in this mansion, and downstairs there were 3 dead adults that had been poisoned as part of a suicide pact. And supposedly there were other children that lived in the house that were nowhere to be found the day of this suicide pact, and Libby's never heard from them. So everyone thinks that they are gone, disappeared, dead. No one knows what happened. So Libby goes on this investigation to kind of put the pieces together about her past, her family, where she came from, and where these children, her technically siblings, might be. The things I liked about this book, I felt like the pace was really, really good. The little tidbits and clues that Lisa Jewell gave us was enough to keep me interested, and she had really short chapters, which was good. Each of the different characters had individual voices, which was nice. But in the end, there was more that I disliked about this book than liked about it. Unfortunately, for a thriller, I did not find this book to be thrilling at all. It read more of like a mystery, family drama type thing than an actual thriller. So there was really no creepy atmosphere, in my opinion, and there was just nothing that made it unsettling, which is what I look for when I read a thriller. Also, this book does revolve around the subjects of cults and characters that are domineering and exploit, and that's not really something that I enjoy reading about. So in the end, this book was not for me. I didn't really enjoy it, and I felt the ending, while I enjoyed Libby's ending, there were other endings to the characters that I didn't really enjoy so much, so I ended up giving The Family Upstairs a 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. This is a YA fantasy, and it involves elements of the King Arthur myth. So we're following a main character named Tamsin, and she lives in our current world, and she is what's known as a hollower. And hollowers steal magical artifacts, usually for sorceresses. And sorceresses are pretty, I don't want to say they're evil, but they're not to be trusted in this world. And there is a portal fantasy element to this book. So Tamsin was raised by this guy named Nash, and he was a hollower. And then she has an adopted brother as well. His name is Cable, and Cable is suffering from this curse where he turns into this hound, wolf, werewolf type thing. And Nash disappeared with this ring, King Arthur's ring, that has the rumor to remove curses from any person. So Tamsin and Cable, as well as Emrys, who is like Tamsin's archenemy, decide to go into this portal world to hunt down this ring so that she can save her brother Cable from this curse. So this book took me a little bit of a while to get into. I found that the pacing at the beginning of the book was pretty slow, and I wasn't even sure that I was going to continue reading it. But looking back, Alexandra Bracken was setting up a lot of backstory to get us to where we needed to go. So if you're finding yourself struggling in the first 100 pages or so of this book, just keep going. Once the characters were in this magical land, the plot really took off. But that is another problem that I have with this book, is that I found the plot to be extremely convoluted. Because when you read the synopsis, there is a main conflict. Cable has this curse. They need this ring to break this curse, so they go after the ring. So that's the conflict we're presented with, but once we get into the meat of the story, we are presented with so many more conflicts. Like, oh my God, so many more, to the point where I was having trouble keeping up. And in the end, I was asking myself, what the heck is this story even about? Because I was sold one thing and then I'm given something else. So the story wasn't bad. It just did not follow the plot that I was promised. And yes, she does circle back around to Cable's plight and all of that at the end, but it just took like a long way to get there. To be honest, I'm probably not going to be continuing with this series because I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was fun. I just didn't like it enough for me to want to read book 2, and I ended up giving Silver in the Bone 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. This is the final book in the Books of Babel series. Yes, I finally finished it. I picked this book up, I think in December of last year, maybe January, and put it down after 200 pages because I was just not feeling it. And I decided I was going to finish it in July, and I did. So if you're not familiar with what this series is about, it's a fantastical series, but there's really no magic. Like, think of like steampunk, a little bit of sci-fi, and our main character is Thomas Senlin, who is a teacher, and in book 1, he goes with his new bride to Babel, the Tower of Babel, which has all of these different ringdoms, and all of these different ringdoms, I think there's like 120 ringdoms, have like different attractions and things you can see. And then his wife Maria goes missing as soon as they get there, and Senlin spends all of book 1 trying to figure out what happened to her. And then the story kind of progresses from there. So we actually learn way more about the tower, the founders of the tower, some politics and injustices going on in the tower that Senlin and people he meets along the way gets involved in. And the plot just expands so much. So for a finale, I will be honest, I struggled with this book quite a bit. It was way too long, 600 and something pages. It didn't need to be, because what happened is we started off with Senlin and his story, which I was fully invested in. And by book 4, Senlin had kind of taken a back seat. And with, I don't know if Josiah Bancroft has published any other books. I don't think so. But I've noticed with like new authors, they do this. Like, if you think of Anthony Ryan in his Raven Shadow series, he did the same exact thing, where Valen, our main character that everybody loved, took a back seat, and everyone got mad about it because the series was about Valen. And in this, it's about Senlin. And by book 4, it was only kind of about Senlin. And then I got a very unsatisfactory ending with Senlin and his wife. Like, that's not what I wanted. I wanted more. And then there was a little bit of an open-ended ending with regards to Valita and Adam. And I feel like there actually could be another series spun off from this that follows their journey. But once again, unsatisfactory, open-ended ending. Wasn't a fan. So I feel like this book was way too long-winded. We just spent way too much time with these other characters that was not necessary. I will say that I really did enjoy Edith in this book. I really liked the way that Josiah Bancroft wrote her and developed her as a character, and her ending. I really loved her ending. It just fits so well. But in the end, unfortunately, this wasn't my favorite book of the series, and I ended up giving it a generous 3 out of 5 stars. And then we have Dust by Hugh Howey. This is book 3 in the Silo series, which is an adult sci-fi post-apocalyptic type story. And I really liked this book. It definitely wasn't as long or dense as Shift, which took me a good while to get through. I was really happy I was able to get through this book so quickly. But what I liked about it is that the way the trilogy was set up, Shift was all of the backstory, all of the information we needed in order to bridge books 1 and 3. And then by the time we got to book 3, the plot wasn't bogged down by all of those details because the reader already knew about this world and why things were the way they were and what was happening. And we were just following the characters as they were overcoming the conflicts that were placed in front of them. So I really enjoyed Juliet's story and her as a character, and I really enjoyed just learning about the fates of all of these characters once things were resolved. And I was really sad about one person that died that I think I forgot to talk about in my review, but we had one character death in this book that I was not expecting, and it darn near broke my heart. I was like, no, that cannot be true. But this was definitely an excellent conclusion to the trilogy, and I highly recommend the whole thing. I ended up giving Dust 4 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I have Belladonna by Adeline Grace, which is a YA fantasy, paranormal fantasy. And in this book, we're following a girl named Signa. And when she's 20 years old, she's set to inherit her parents' wealth. They died when she was young. And Signa has been passed around from like family member to family member. But every time she goes to live with a new family member, eventually that family member dies. So she starts to think of herself as like the harbinger of death. But the thing about Signa is that she can actually see and interact with Death, who is a character in this world, as well as ghosts and spirits. So Signa is sent to live with a family member, and she learns that the matriarch of that family has died by poisoning because her ghost comes and tells her as much and asks her to help figure out who murdered her. So Signa takes on this burden and starts to investigate. In addition, Blythe, her cousin, is also being poisoned, but no one knows like who's poisoning and why. So Signa has to solve the mystery. And the reason I like this book so much is I thought that the writing was beautiful. I thought that the atmosphere and the setting was creepy and gothic and really, really just dark and dreary, and I absolutely loved it. And I also liked Signa's interaction with death. It just added a different dynamic to the story that I had never really read before. And I just liked reading how Adeline Grace embodied death, which is like a, intangible, abstract type thing, and made it a character. And I just really enjoyed this book overall. It did have a complete conclusion, so you can read this as a standalone, but it does have a sequel coming out, I think this month, yeah, in August. But you definitely can read it as a standalone, and I highly recommend it. I ended up giving this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, you guys, those are the 5 books that I read in the month of July. I'm very happy with my reading month. Please let me know in the comments if you read any of these books and what you thought of them, as well as some of the books that you read in July and your thoughts on them. And I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.